chosen one, a presence of real power and lived wealth is moving toward your life right now. Not loudly, not suddenly, but with the quiet certainty of something that was always meant to cross your path. Here's how it begins. It begins with attention, with listening, with this moment right here, where something inside you slows down just enough to recognize that this isn't just another message passing through your day. Stay with this video until the end, because what's unfolding isn't meant to be skimmed or rushed. And if at any point you feel a gentle pull in your chest or a calm clarity settling in, write your warmest wish in the comments and add Amen. Not for show, not for approval, but as a way of energizing intention and allowing what's already in motion to align more clearly with you. Now let's talk about the figure that's approaching your life. Not a fantasy character, not a myth, a real person. Someone whose relationship with wealth is settled, grounded, almost quiet. This isn't the type who needs to prove anything. They've already lived through the proving stage. They've seen cycles rise and fall. They understand money not as a rush, but as a language. And what's important is not just that they're wealthy, but that they recognize something in you that feels familiar, something steady, something worth investing in, even if that investment doesn't look obvious at first. These encounters rarely happen the way movies portray them. There's no dramatic announcement, no spotlight. Often, it starts as a simple interaction, a conversation that feels strangely easy, a moment where you're fully yourself without trying. You may even underestimate it at first. You might walk away thinking it was ordinary. But later, sometimes much later, you realize that was the moment the direction shifted. Your life has been preparing you for this kind of meeting longer than you realize. All those years of learning to read between the lines, all those situations where you had to rely on judgment instead of certainty. You learned how to listen, how to observe energy, not just words. That's why this person will notice you. They're not drawn to noise, they're drawn to clarity. You may wonder why now. Why not earlier when you needed help more desperately? But desperation attracts the wrong kind of attention, dependency, control. The figure entering your life isn't coming to rescue you. They're coming to recognize you, to meet you at a level where respect is mutual, where value flows both ways. This person sees potential differently than most. They don't just look at what you've achieved, they look at how you move through uncertainty, how you respond under pressure, how you carry yourself when nothing is guaranteed. They notice restraint, they notice timing, they notice when someone doesn't oversell themselves. Those details matter more to them than credentials ever could. You've probably felt a subtle shift recently, a sense that your environment is thinning out. Fewer distractions, fewer meaningless conversations, less tolerance for chaos. That's not coincidence. When something significant is about to enter your life, unnecessary noise starts to fall away. Not violently, just naturally. Like leaves dropping when the season changes. This wealthy figure doesn't arrive to overwhelm you. They arrive to open a door you were already standing near. Sometimes the door is opportunity. Sometimes it's access. Sometimes it's perspective. Often it's all three. But none of it works unless you're ready to walk through without shrinking yourself. You don't need to impress them. In fact, trying to will push them away. What draws them in is your calm presence, your grounded way of speaking, your ability to say, "I don't know," without insecurity. That signals maturity. That signals someone who can be trusted with scale. There's also something important to understand. This person isn't perfect. They carry their own scars, their own lessons. Their wealth came with costs. They know what it takes. That's why they're careful about who they let close. When they sense someone who respects the weight of responsibility, not just the shine of success, they pay attention. When this connection forms, things may not change overnight. That's intentional. True alignment unfolds gradually. First, trust builds. Then, opportunity appears in subtle ways. A recommendation, an introduction, a chance to be seen in a different context. Pay attention to small openings. They matter. You might feel moments of doubt, wonder if you're ready, wonder if you're enough. Let those thoughts pass without feeding them. Readiness isn't the absence of fear, it's the ability to act without letting fear dictate your posture. This figure respects courage that's quiet, not performative. This isn't about dependency, it's about alignment, about two paths crossing at the right moment, each bringing something real to the table. You bring insight, perspective, integrity, and lived experience. They bring resources, reach, and strategic vision. Together, something sustainable becomes possible. Stay present in your life right now. Don't rush ahead mentally. Don't cling to outcomes. When the moment arrives, it will feel surprisingly natural, like recognition, like something clicking into place without forcing. Listen closely, not just to this message, but to your instincts in the coming days. The signs won't be loud, they'll be precise. And when the door opens, you'll know why it had to be this way. There's something subtle that happens before this person truly enters your life. A quiet, internal adjustment. You start noticing that your reactions change. Things that once rattled you don't land the same way. You pause more. You listen longer. You don't feel the need to fill silence or explain yourself. This isn't random. It's preparation. When someone with lived wealth approaches, they feel the difference immediately. They're used to people performing, selling, exaggerating. Calm authenticity stands out like a clean line in a crowded room. You might feel moments of impatience during this phase, a sense of, why hasn't anything happened yet if I'm sensing all this movement? That impatience is human. Let it pass. What's happening now isn't visible work. It's internal alignment, the kind that makes the external moment land cleanly when it arrives. If this meeting happened before this stage, it would have felt unbalanced. You would have questioned yourself more, deferred too quickly, or overreached. Timing matters more than desire. This figure doesn't enter your life by accident, and they don't stay out of politeness. They stay because something about you feels stable. Not rigid, stable. You don't drain energy, you don't demand reassurance. You're present without being heavy. That's rare, especially rare among people who still want more from life but aren't desperate for it. When you finally notice them, you may not even label them as wealthy at first. That's important. True wealth often doesn't announce itself. It moves efficiently, quietly. This person may dress simply, speak directly, ask thoughtful questions. They're observing far more than they're saying. They're watching how you handle small moments, interruptions, disagreements, uncertainty. They're listening for how you talk about others when nothing is at stake. Your past experiences, even the ones you once wished away, become relevant here. The times you had to figure things out alone. The seasons where you carried responsibility early. The disappointments that taught you discernment. All of that shows up in how you speak now, in how you pause before responding, in how you don't overpromise. This person notices. They trust patterns more than words. There may be a moment where you're invited into a space you haven't been before. Not necessarily physically. Sometimes it's a conversation that goes deeper than expected. A question that assumes competence instead of testing it. A suggestion that places you in a different category than you're used to. Pay attention to how your body reacts. If there's calm mixed with alertness, that's alignment. If there's panic, breathe and slow down. You don't need to rush to belong, you already do. This figure isn't here to hand you something fragile. They're here to open access to something durable. And durability requires mutual respect. That respect grows when you don't rush intimacy, when you allow trust to build through consistency, through showing up the same way more than once, through being reliable without being rigid. You might be tempted to downplay yourself, to soften your vision so it feels less intimidating. Don't. You don't need to exaggerate, but don't shrink. Speak plainly about what you're building, what you value, what you're learning. Confidence without defense is magnetic, especially to someone who has seen enough noise to value clarity. There's also a test that often appears here, subtle but important. An opportunity that looks good but doesn't quite feel right. Or a moment where you can overstep to impress. This isn't a trap, it's a mirror. Stay aligned. The figure watching doesn't need perfection. They need to see that you trust your own judgment. As this connection deepens, you may notice your own standards rising. Not out of ego, but out of awareness. You become more selective with your time, more careful with your energy, less willing to entertain distractions that don't move you forward. That's a sign you're stepping into a different phase, one where proximity matters. This isn't the beginning of dependence. It's the beginning of collaboration, mentorship, or strategic alignment. The form may differ, but the essence is the same. You are being recognized not for who you might become someday, but for who you already are when no one is watching. Let things unfold at their natural pace. Stay present, stay observant, stay grounded in your values. When this person fully steps into your life, it won't feel like a sudden miracle. It will feel like confirmation, like something quietly saying, yes, this is why you walked the path the way you did. By the time this connection becomes undeniable, something else will already have shifted inside you. Your sense of worth won't be tied so tightly to outcomes anymore. You'll notice it in small ways. How you wait without tension, how you speak without rehearsing, how you don't chase responses that don't come immediately. That internal steadiness changes the entire dynamic. It turns what could have been a power imbalance into something balanced, something real. This wealthy figure doesn't respond to urgency. They've lived too long around people who rush, who push, who need something now. What catches their attention is composure, the ability to hold vision without gripping it too tightly. When they see that in you, they don't feel pressure, they feel possibility. There may be moments where you're tempted to ask for more clarity, to define the connection too quickly. Resist that urge. Let it breathe. Some of the most meaningful doors open not because they're forced open, but because they're trusted to open on their own. Silence, when it's comfortable, builds more trust than explanation ever could. As this person becomes more present in your life, you might notice they start sharing selectively. Not everything, just enough. Small insights, lessons disguised as stories, observations that sound casual but carry weight. Listen closely. These aren't speeches, they're signals. They're showing you how they think, how they decide, how they protect what they've built. You may also realize that this connection challenges you, not harshly, gently,
They might question an assumption you've held for years.
or point out a blind spot without judgment. This isn't criticism, it's refinement. People who have sustained wealth understand that growth never really stops. They respect those who are still willing to learn. There could be a moment where you're offered something that feels just beyond your comfort zone. Not overwhelming, just unfamiliar. That's intentional. They're watching how you respond to expansion. Do you freeze? Do you deflect? Or do you take a breath and step forward without pretending to know everything? That response matters. You don't need to mirror them. You don't need to adopt their style, their language, their pace. What strengthens this bond is contrast paired with respect. You bring a perspective shaped by your own path, your own struggles, your own insights. That's not a weakness. That's the value. At some point, you may notice others responding to you differently as well, not because of status, but because your posture has changed. You're less reactive, more centered. You speak with intention instead of urgency. People sense when someone has access, even before they know what that access is. Energy travels ahead of explanation. It's important here not to romanticize the connection. This person isn't a savior. They're human. They have limitations, expectations, boundaries. Respecting those boundaries is part of what keeps the connection clean. You don't lean too hard. You don't disappear either. You show up consistently, honestly. There may be delays, gaps between interactions, periods where you wonder if anything is actually happening. It is. Trust is consolidating. Decisions are forming quietly. People with wealth often move slower than expected, not because they're unsure, but because they're precise. Stay grounded in your own life during this time. Don't put things on hold, waiting for something external to define you. Keep building. Keep learning. Keep refining your craft, your ideas, your sense of direction. When the moment comes to step into something larger, you'll do so without scrambling. This phase isn't about proving yourself. It's about being consistent enough that proof becomes unnecessary. And when the alignment fully locks in, you'll feel it. Not as excitement, but as calm certainty. As a sense that you're standing on solid ground, finally meeting someone who recognizes that strength without needing to name it. At this stage, something deeper settles in. A quiet confidence that doesn't need reinforcement. You're no longer scanning every interaction for signs, no longer trying to read meaning into silence. You're present, fully, and that presence changes how everything unfolds. The wealthy figure begins to engage with you in a more deliberate way now, not constantly, not dramatically, but with intention. They ask questions that aren't casual anymore. They remember details you didn't think mattered. A comment you made weeks ago, a hesitation you showed once. This isn't surveillance, it's respect. People who build lasting wealth pay attention because attention is how they protect what they've created. You may notice that when you speak, you're given space, not interrupted, not rushed. That's a signal. It means your words carry weight here, and weight isn't given freely. It's earned through consistency, not performance, through being the same person whether the room is full or empty. There's often a moment in this phase that feels strangely ordinary but carries long-term impact. A decision made without ceremony, a quiet agreement, a suggestion followed by action. No contracts yet, no announcements, just movement. This is how real things begin. not with fireworks, but with foundation. You might feel a pull to over-prepare, to anticipate every possible outcome. Let that go. You've already done the hardest preparation, which was becoming someone who can stay grounded while things expand. Overthinking now only disrupts the natural rhythm forming between you and this person. What's forming here isn't just opportunity, it's trust-based proximity, access that's built slowly so it doesn't collapse under pressure. That's why this figure values your restraint. You don't ask for more than what's being offered. You don't test boundaries just to see if you can. That maturity is rare, and it's noticed. There may be moments where you're invited to observe rather than act, to sit in rooms where decisions are made without being asked to contribute immediately. That's not exclusion, that's orientation. You're being allowed to understand the environment before shaping it. Pay attention. How people speak, how tension is handled, how power moves without announcing itself. At the same time, your own inner compass sharpens. You start seeing more clearly what you want and what you don't. Not in theory, but in practice. You realize that some ambitions were inherited, not chosen. Some goals were reactions, not visions. This clarity aligns you even more strongly with the kind of wealth that lasts, the kind that doesn't cost your peace. The figure in your life begins to mirror this clarity back to you. They may articulate possibilities you felt but never named, or they may challenge you to refine what you've been carrying loosely. These conversations don't feel heavy, they feel clean, like dust settling. It's important here to stay honest with yourself. If something doesn't feel right, don't ignore it just because the door looks promising. Alignment doesn't require self-betrayal. In fact, the moment you choose integrity over advantage, the connection strengthens. People who've lost and rebuilt know the value of that choice. You may also notice a shift in how you relate to money itself. Less emotional charge, less fear, less urgency. It becomes a tool again, not a measure of worth.
That internal shift is subtle,
But it's one of the clearest signs that you're entering a new phase. Nothing here needs to be rushed. The pace you're moving at now is intentional. It's the pace of sustainability, of mutual recognition, of two paths adjusting slightly so they can run alongside each other without friction. Trust what's forming. Stay steady, stay honest. The groundwork you're laying in this phase determines not just what enters your life, but how long it stays and how cleanly it grows. By now, you can feel it in your body before you understand it with your mind. A sense of settling, of things clicking into place without needing explanation. You're not bracing anymore. You're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. There's a grounded calm that follows you through your days, even when nothing extraordinary seems to be happening on the surface. This is where the dynamic truly shifts. The wealthy figure no longer approaches you with curiosity alone. There's trust now, not blind trust, but earned trust. The kind that grows from seeing someone remain consistent over time, not just impressive in moments. They've watched how you handle responsibility when no one is watching, how you speak about others when there's nothing to gain, how you manage disappointment without turning sharp or small. These things matter more than ambition ever could. You may notice that access increases quietly. You're looped into conversations that once felt distant. You're given context, not just tasks. Insight, not just instruction. This is how inclusion really happens. Not through grand gestures, but through proximity. Through being present when decisions are forming, not just after they're made. There might be a moment where you're tested in a way that feels subtle but personal. Not a challenge thrown at you, but a situation that reveals how you handle pressure when the stakes are real. Maybe something goes wrong. Maybe expectations shift suddenly. Maybe you're given responsibility without much guidance. How you move through that moment says everything. Calm, adaptable, honest. Those qualities build confidence faster than any polished performance. At the same time, you're becoming more aware of your own limits. And instead of hiding them, you respect them. You say no when needed. You ask questions without insecurity. You don't pretend to know what you don't. This doesn't weaken your position. It strengthens it. People who manage wealth long-term understand that pretending is expensive. It costs time. It costs trust. It costs clarity. Your sense of identity continues to stabilize here. You're no longer defining yourself by proximity to this figure or what they might offer. You remain rooted in your own values, your own direction. That independence is crucial. It allows the connection to exist without distortion, without imbalance, without unspoken expectations. You may also begin to see more clearly how wealth actually functions behind the scenes. The discipline, the patience, the long-term thinking, the willingness to delay gratification in favor of sustainability. This knowledge demystifies things. It removes illusion, and in doing so, it empowers you. You stop seeing wealth as something distant or mystical. You see it as something built through repeated, aligned choices. There can be moments of doubt here too, quiet ones. You might wonder if you're truly ready for what's opening up. That doubt isn't a signal to retreat. It's a signal that you're standing at the edge of expansion. Growth always brings a little uncertainty with it. The key is not letting that uncertainty turn into self-sabotage. This phase asks for steadiness more than brilliance, reliability more than intensity. You don't need to push. You don't need to impress. You simply need to remain present and aligned. When you do, opportunities unfold naturally, without force. You may notice that the figure begins to speak more openly now, about mistakes, about lessons learned the hard way, about paths they would and wouldn't take again. This is significant. It means you're no longer being observed from a distance. You're being included in a shared reality. That level of openness isn't given lightly. As this happens, your own vision sharpens. You see more clearly where you're going, and just as importantly, where you're not willing to go. That clarity protects you. It keeps success from pulling you off course. It allows wealth to integrate into your life without erasing who you are. There's no rush here, no finish line you need to sprint toward. What's being built now is durable, sustainable, aligned with who you've become, not who you are pretending to be. And as long as you stay honest, grounded, and present, this connection continues to evolve in ways that feel not overwhelming, but right. And now you arrive at something that feels less like a moment and more like a state. A quiet arrival. Not the kind you announce, not the kind you post about, but the kind you feel when you wake up and realize you're no longer chasing alignment because you're standing inside it. This is where everything slows down again, but in a different way than before. Not the slow of waiting, the slow of stability, the slow of knowing that what's forming doesn't need to rush to prove itself. The wealthy figure in your life is no longer an idea or a possibility. They are simply there, present, integrated, part of your reality in a way that feels natural, not disruptive. You trust yourself here. That's the biggest shift. You don't second-guess every instinct. You don't look outside yourself for constant confirmation. You've learned when to listen and when to move, when to speak and when silence carries more power. That discernment didn't come from success alone. It came from everything that came before it. The connection you now hold isn't fragile.
It doesn't depend on
Constant contact or reassurance. It holds its shape even in distance, even in quiet. That's how you know it's real. Real wealth connections don't cling. They respect space. They understand timing. They survive pauses. You may notice that what once felt intimidating now feels workable. Not small, just human. You see systems instead of mystique, decisions instead of drama. And that clarity does something important. It removes fear. Fear was never your motivator anyway. It was your teacher, and now its job is done. There will still be challenges, that doesn't disappear. But they won't feel personal anymore. They'll feel logistical, solvable, part of movement, not signs of misalignment. You'll meet them with steadiness, not emotion, with response, not reaction. What's important now is that you don't abandon yourself at the edge of expansion. Don't forget the pace that brought you here. Don't trade depth for speed. The wealth entering and surrounding your life responds to who you are when things are quiet, not when they're loud. You're allowed to enjoy this, to let it be good without bracing for loss. That's part of receiving, letting things stay, letting them grow roots, letting stability feel normal instead of suspicious. This isn't the end of your path, it's a new terrain, one that requires presence more than effort, honesty more than intensity. You're equipped for that now, so stay grounded. Stay curious. Stay true to the internal compass that guided you when nothing made sense yet. It hasn't led you wrong so far. What's around you now isn't coincidence. It's consequence, the natural result of becoming someone who can meet opportunity without losing themselves. And that's the real wealth.